Hiya folks, welcome back to my random dumping ground of a channel over here. A few people had asked over the years how I do like colour correction and trying to get a better quality image through my video editing software, and if you're making videos on YouTube, this might be relevant to you. So I thought I'd tell you a very brief overview of how I do color correction. Within Magix Vegas, this is Vegas Pro version 15 that I'm using, so it's not like a mega old version, but I think we're up to version 17 or something, maybe even 18, I'm not sure. Anyway, I am absolutely not an expert on this subject, so if you're looking for advanced color correction tutorials, then find a different video. If you are already really up to speed with color correction in Vegas, you are probably going to be shouting at the monitor at all the bad things that I'm doing. But if you're just after a kind of basic, easy to understand version of how to color correct and get slightly better results, then hopefully this will be of some use to you. I'm actually doing a re-edit of an old video here, and I'm not sure how old it is. It's over 2 years old, this particular video, and I'll show you the original footage first. Let me just drag this over here. I'm just turning the volume down so I can speak over this. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that the contrast and everything is really blown out, and I'm going to explain why that is in a minute. It's a setting that I had wrong in Vegas at the time, and I'm going to give you a tip for how to fix that. If you're noticing that your whites are far too white and your blacks are far too black, then it's almost certainly connected with this setting that I only discovered about 15 months ago or something like that. So, and if you just compare this footage here to the original footage, you see when I was editing the video, it didn't look like this. Let me just show you the original footage in Vegas. So you can see if you compare that to the final rendered footage, you know, there's quite a radical difference in terms of the contrast between the two, and it's all because of this setting, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to tidy up the color correction in general. I'm going to do a full re-edit of this particular video anyway, so it's a good opportunity for me to just sort this out. I do normally have the preview monitor over on my second monitor over on the other side of the screen. If I record that, that's going to make the picture really weird shape for you guys to watch. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to change to a preset view I've got where I've got everything on the one screen. And I've also got, I do have a window set up with color correction tools. If you want to use these, you can. I've found them unnecessarily complicated, and you can get into using all these video scopes and whatnot if you want, but I've found I've edited so many videos over the years, I can get it near as damn it by eye. And you know, if you're really looking to fine tune things to get it broadcast quality, then fine, use all of these scopes and things. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to go into a quick color correction. Just make the preview monitor a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do, as I say, how things look on the preview monitor here in Vegas isn't how things are going to render. And I didn't realize that until I started doing some research into it. And to cut a long story short, what you want to do is apply an effect onto your preview monitor. Just go into the little FX thing here. And what I do is I add Vegas levels. And I've already got a preset for this, but you can copy the settings. I think it is a default one anyway. And you want to change it to Studio RGB to Computer RGB. And I've added a thing in only for edit, because you're going to switch it off when you do the render. Otherwise, you're going to end up applying that effect onto the render, and you don't want to do that. So you change over to this and look at the difference. This is what the final rendered version of the video is going to look like. Let me just show you. In fact, can I do a side by side? Yeah. So you can kind of see there, side by side, this is with no effect, and this is with the effect on the right hand side. The right hand side version is what the rendered video is going to look like. But you've got to remember when you do the render, switch that off. Otherwise it'll effectively, you're kind of getting the same treatment applied twice. I'm not going to go into why you need to do that. Just trust me that if you do it, your video quality is going to be massively better than it was. So once you've got that switched on, I've already done, let me just switch that off. I've already done some color correction on this section of video here, but I'm going to just go to a section where we've got like the white wall and everything in the background. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to try and find a section of the video where I've got quite a lot of kind of background, like this kind of thing where we've got me in the shot and we've got quite a lot of background. It's not like a closer up type thing. So what I like to do, I arrange my clips so that I've got a track per color correction level, because then I can just apply one set of color correction to the entire track. If I know that it's the same white balance and it's the same day and it's the same lighting and everything, the color correction is going to be the same for every single clip. So it doesn't matter that I've done 20 separate clips on that particular track. I can just apply the color correction at track level. For my B-roll footage, I tend to do the color correction on the individual clips, because the B-roll tends to be just short little clips where it's the camera's moved to a different position, so the color correction is going to be different. So for the B-roll stuff, I color correct. That's not really a very good example. Let me just find some B-roll. So for the B-roll, I would suggest you just do it through applying an effect onto the actual event and doing it through that. I haven't done any of these yet, and I need to sort those out. But for track level stuff where you've got a whole load of footage that's around the same exposure and all that, then just shove them onto one track and just do it at track level. And to do that, all you do over on the far left here, click on the little more button and do track effects. And then the two effects that I generally add are brightness and contrast and color corrector. So we'll add those on. As I say, I've normally got this over in a second monitor and it's a little bit easier to see what's going on, but I'll try my best to show you. So the first thing I do, very first thing, go into your color corrector. I do this through the custom option in here, and I'm going to be using this little dropper tool to select an area that we know is white. And I know this area of wall here should be white. If you haven't got anything in your footage that's white, you're not going to be able to do this. But this is where it can be useful to just kind of hold up a white sheet of paper or something like that before you start talking, just so you've got a reference point that you can do your color correction from. But I don't need to do that. I've got a white wall here that I can work off. And all I'm going to do, first of all, we're looking for bright white stuff. So I'm going to use this little dropper here, and I'm going to click, this is fairly bright white over here, and I'm just going to click there. And there you can see it's done an auto adjustment on the color correction to tell it that that should be white. And now I'm going to do exactly the same for the mid-tones. I'm going to take that and I'm going to go just for a slightly darker area of wall. We're not going like full shadows or anything like that. I'm just going to go kind of around here. Now, this is done normally because both these areas of wall are effectively in the same lighting. Normally, you end up with this moving to the same area of the color spectrum. But you can see here, for the lights, it's moved into the yellow range, and for the mids, it's moved into the blue range. So you're going to have to make a judgment call there. And this is where using the eyedropper tool just kind of falls down sometimes. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Give it a try. And if you find the image looks good after you've done the eyedropper tool, then you can probably leave it at that and your color correction's effectively done. But what I like to do from that point onwards, I go back to, I prefer this screen for working off. These should really be the same because they're both in the same section of wall, they're both in the same lighting. So I don't like having one set of color correction for the mids that is directly opposite to the color correction used for the highs. It just doesn't really make sense. So In which case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try matching the mids up roughly to what the highs are, and we'll see how that looks. So don't overdo it, because, well, you can see if you push too far, it's just going to look absolutely ridiculous. And only do this if if you've managed to get a good white balance out your camera in the first place. You shouldn't really need to do that much in the way of color correction, but I think around there is going to look pretty good. And just go through your footage and have a look at a few different clips. You see, to me, it's looking a little on the green side. Again, this is a bit easier when I've got it on the second monitor and it's a bit bigger, but you can see, so I'm only adjusting the high levels here, a little bit away from the greens and more towards the reds. I think that looks pretty good. I'm fairly happy with that. So what I then do is I do the brightness and contrast and gamma and all that sort of thing. So again, this is something where you can get the scopes out and you can see what's going on. Here you can see we've got a really high peak in the highs. We've got a lot towards the lows and the bottom end. What I'm going to actually do, I'm just going to boost up on the gamma here. This highs, let's see, what have we got in the image that's causing that massive spike? Ah, okay. That's from the window. That doesn't matter. I don't care about that. So I can completely ignore this band here because that's from the incredibly overexposed window in the background. I'm not bothered about that. I mean, if you want, you can put something over the image there just to block it out temporarily. There's probably clever ways of doing that, but I don't know. So we're going to ignore that. And all I'm going to do, I want everything to move slightly more to the right-hand side here. So we've got a bit of a more, you see, this is tricky when I'm not on a second monitor. Can you see how the whole lot's moving left and right? And we're just trying to get a slightly more balanced view of things where the darks aren't quite as dark and the lights are a little bit brighter, but I need to be careful here that it doesn't wash out all the detail in this wall. So you can see, okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just bump up the contrast a little bit so that my shirt is a little bit darker. And because of all this that I've done in terms of boosting the gamma, we've now got a lot of the noise has come out of the video footage. So I'm going to just reduce that down a bit. Because I'm now reducing that down, I can probably also reduce the contrast down. Normally you don't have to do very much. You see, it's just tiny, tiny changes. And I'm pretty happy with that. You know, that's fine for a video of this kind of quality. You know, if this was going out on TV or something, it would be a different story, but that's all it needs. I've done a little bit of the color correction. I've tweaked the brightness and contrast a little bit. And, you know, sometimes I'll have a play with these sliders as well. Sometimes I'll do it in conjunction with this. But as I say, over the years, I've learned to just do it by eye. Overall, you're aiming to have, on your waveform graph here, you're aiming for everything to really be between the 0 and 100, or around that. This is like a little bit below. That doesn't really matter. Again, it's a tricky thing to show you without having a second monitor to work on. Let me just, sometimes you can use the offset just to bring the whole thing up a bit. You see how I've brought this up to around 0. This has got a little bit closer to the 100, but then I'll also refer back to this. You see, I think that looks too washed out. That's pretty good. So again, if you want to reset something, just double click the thing and it'll reset. I am going to offset it a tiny bit. And you can see it just kind of stops my shirt from looking too black and you lose all the detail in it. One of the problems here, I think, is that I've got the main lights on, which is a very kind of yellow lights from the dichroics or whatever they are, the spots in the ceiling. You can see the yellow light on the back of my neck there, but I'm also using video filming lights which have a very white light, and that's what's illuminating most of the wall, and I think that's why the color correction's getting a little bit confused. If possible, have the same light everywhere. Again, you know, this is a learning curve that you learn over time. This was a couple of years ago I shot this, and there's things I do now that are very different to the way that I shot things 2 years ago. But other than that, that's fine. And as I say, because that's applied at track level, and what I would do is obviously I would go through and watch the whole lot, just check that everything that is on that track doesn't look ridiculous. But to me, that's all looking pretty good, to be honest. I'll just show you quickly for B-roll stuff. So here's some B-roll footage here. You can see it's blown out, terribly blown out. But that will be because I'll have a track level color correction on, which I don't do that anymore for B-roll. So I'm going to take the track level color correction off completely. Doesn't need it. And then what I'll do is I'll just go into this piece of footage here, the event, and I'll apply the color correction at event level. Exactly the same. Works in the same way. I can go to the color corrector here. Again, we're on a white sheet of paper, so that's perfect. Pick the brightest bit. That looks pretty good. And we'll pick a kind of mid-tone bit. I never bother doing the low-end color correction. You can't tell the difference. Professional photographers will be shouting at me right now. There we go. So I've done the mids and the highs. You can see how these are both around the same area of the color spectrum. That's exactly what you want. You don't want it where one's like up here and the other one's down there. That something's gone awry if that's happening. So for this color correction, I'm using this white bit here, and I'm using this little bit that's in a shadow for the mid-tones. And now I'll go back to this. What I normally do is just tone it down a little bit, because to me that's far too blue. So I'm just going to tone it down a bit. It just makes it a bit more natural. Because at the end of the day, I'm filming this in my own house. I want it to look like I'm filming it in a house. I'm not filming it in a production studio, so I don't want everything to look like too blue. That looks pretty good. And again, I'm just going to apply a bit more contrast to this. And then normally I use the gamma. I use a combination of the contrast and the gamma. I very rarely use the brightness to control how bright things are. I find using the gamma option just works better because you don't lose the contrast out the image. But if I just wanted to make the light things a bit lighter and just give a bit more kind of contrast to the image without making the dark things lighter. You see, if I do this through brightness and contrast, all of my shadows are getting brighter as well, which I don't want. Whereas doing it through the gamma, the shadows still stay nice and dark, but your light things are getting lighter. Again, this is just the way I do it. It works for me. It's fine. And that's it. Normally, when I'm not chatting, I can get the color correction done on a complete video without obviously watching the video. I can get all the color correction done in about 10 minutes, so it doesn't take that long. As I say, group your tracks so that if possible you can do as much of your color correction at track level if possible. But then I would suggest for B-roll you do them at event level or clip level. Cool. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments. If you want to shout at my ridiculously bad editing techniques, please also pop those in the comments as well, because I'm always keen to learn better ways of doing things. I've been using Vegas for a long time. I am not an expert in color correction by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the results are fine for the sort of videos I'm producing, but I'm always keen to learn more. And hopefully this has been of some benefit to you if you use Vegas for video editing and you wanted to just get some tips and whatnot. Don't forget, when you render your video, you need to switch off this. So at the point that everything's done and you're happy and you're about to press render, switch your video output effects off. And it'll look all grey and washed out. That's fine. Your final render should look spot on. Thanks again for watching. I shall see you on the next random video on this channel. Right, tatty bye.